The land around me is so flat that people here joke you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. But this flatness is actually the floor of a vanished lake, a lake that was once larger than all of the Great Lakes combined. And the grass rolling away to the horizon is one of the rarest landscapes left in North America. This evening I am hiking Buffalo River State Park in the far northwest corner of Minnesota. Stay with me, because the flattest country in America is hiding one of its best stories. We are in Clay County, Minnesota, out where the state leans against North Dakota. The park sits about 4.5 miles east of the little town of Glyndon, and roughly 14 miles east of Moorhead and its twin city Fargo, just across the Red River. The Buffalo River winds through the middle of the park on its way to join the Red, which then does something unusual for an American river. It flows north, all the way toward Hudson Bay in Canada. The park itself covers just over 1,000 acres, threaded with about 12 miles of hiking trail. It is a warm Saturday evening in late July, a little after 5:30, and the light is already turning gold. Ahead of me is a loop of roughly 3 miles through prairie and riverside forest. In high summer, the grass out here stands waist-high and better, and everything is in motion. The wind never really stops in this country. It just changes its mind about direction. To understand this place, you have to picture the end of the last ice age. As the great ice sheet melted back toward Canada, its meltwater had nowhere to drain because the land still sloped north, straight into the wall of ice. So the water pooled into Glacial Lake Agassiz, a freshwater inland sea that at its greatest extent was larger than all of the modern Great Lakes put together. Everything you see here spent thousands of years at the bottom of it. The lake only finished draining away around 8,000 years ago, when the ice finally released it north. All those centuries underwater left a signature. Fine silt and clay settled out of Lake Agassiz year after year, until the sediments lay hundreds of feet deep, in places between 250 and 500 feet. When the water withdrew, it exposed a lakebed so level that engineers call the Red River Valley one of the flattest landscapes on the planet. That is why the horizon here runs like a ruler. You are not standing on a plain that was worn down. You are standing on the bottom of a lake that was drained. You can read all of that from the trail. Look in any direction and the land barely bothers to rise or fall. Grain elevators and shelter belts stand on the horizon like ships at sea. Out here, a rise of 10 feet counts as a hill, and people will give you directions by it. It sounds like emptiness, but keep walking. This ground is about to get interesting. Because a lake this size left more than mud, it left its own shorelines. As Agassiz shrank in stages, waves piled sand and gravel into long, low ridges at each pause, the way surf builds a beach today. Geologists have named them, and 2 of those ancient strand lines run right through this landscape. Campbell Ridge passes along the eastern edge of the park, and Norcross Ridge crosses the prairie just to the southeast. They are subtle, a gentle swell of gravel a few feet high, but they are beaches, stranded hundreds of miles from any sea. So when the trail lifts you over a long, low rise like this one, think about what is under your boots. 10,000 years ago, this was the waterline, with cold gray waves breaking on one side and open water to the other. The gravel in these ridges drains better than the heavy lakebed clay, so different wildflowers grow up here. Early trails and roads followed the same high ground for the same reason. On the flattest land in America, even a beach makes a highway. When the lake was gone, the grass moved in and it built an empire. Tallgrass Prairie once swept across the heart of North America, and Minnesota alone held roughly 18 million acres of it. This was not a lawn. Big bluestem grass grows taller than a rider on horseback by late summer, and its roots drive deeper into the soil than a person stands tall. Those roots, living and dying over thousands of years, are what built some of the richest black earth in the world. The prairie you are looking at is a factory that manufactures soil. The name of this river remembers who grazed that empire. The Ojibwe called the stream by a name meaning Buffalo River because bison reliably wintered along its wooded banks, sheltered from the wind that scours the open valley. It is easy to picture on an evening like this, dark shaggy herds bedded down in the trees while snow smoked across the flats. The bison are long gone from this valley, but the name has held on through every map since. A river can carry memory as well as water. Ahead of me, the prairie suddenly grows a wall of green. That line of trees marks the river, and it is the only woodland for miles in any direction. Walking toward it feels like approaching an island from open water, which, in a way, is exactly what it is. The temperature drops as you come into the shade. In July, that alone is worth the walk. This ribbon of woods is called a gallery forest, a corridor of elm, ash, cottonwood, and bur oak that survives only because the river keeps it watered and sheltered. The Buffalo is a prairie river, and it behaves like one. It meanders extravagantly, looping back on itself and cutting banks up to 30 feet high into the soft lake sediments. Old abandoned loops lie in the woods as quiet oxbow ponds. Fire once swept the open prairie and kept trees out, but down in this damp corridor, the forest found a permanent truce. Down here, the whole soundtrack changes. Wind in cottonwood leaves sounds like moving water, and the real water slides by below, the color of milky coffee. That color is not pollution. It is the lakebed itself, fine Agassiz clay that never quite settles out. Herons stalk the shallows here, and deer trails stitch every bend. Two worlds, prairie and forest, are never more than a few steps apart. In the 1870s, the railroad reached this valley, and the world discovered what Agassiz silk could do. The Red River Valley became famous for bonanza farms, wheat operations so vast that crews plowed furrows miles long and worked the harvest like a military campaign. The steel plow bit through the ancient root mat with a sound settlers compared to ripping cloth. It was some of the most productive farmland on the continent, and it still is. But every acre gained for wheat was an acre of 10,000-year-old prairie gone. The arithmetic of that transformation is stark. Of the roughly 18 million acres of prairie Minnesota once held, only about 1% survives today. The rest went under the plow within a couple of human lifetimes. What escaped were scraps, land too gravelly, too wet, or simply too lucky to be farmed. The old lake shorelines helped here because those gravel beach ridges made poor cropland and good pasture. That accident of geology is a big part of why this particular prairie was still alive when people finally came to save it. Knowing that changes how you walk through this grass. Every acre here is a survivor, a piece of the original fabric of the continent that never went under the plow. Purple and yellow wildflowers thread through the bluestem in July. Some of these plants are growing on root systems that may be older than any building in Minnesota. This is not a restoration. This is the real thing. The park itself was born in hard times. Minnesota established Buffalo River State Park in 1937 in the depths of the Great Depression, and the Works Progress Administration went to work on its original 122 acres. From 1937 to 1940, WPA crews of local men earned federal paychecks building this park by hand. They raised buildings, laid out roads and trails, and planted shade trees on the open flats. In the middle of the Dust Bowl years, on the driest prairie in memory, they were building a green refuge for the valley. You walk straight through their handiwork on this stretch. These big shade trees standing over the picnic grounds were set out by those crews almost 90 years ago. The lawns, the campground loops, the swimming area, all of it sits where the WPA drew it. 44 campsites fill up here on summer weekends, mostly with families from Fargo and Moorhead. A relief project from the 1930s became the backyard of a whole metro area. And the WPA built like they meant it to last forever. Their log and stone buildings are still standing, still in use, made of materials that look grown from the landscape rather than imported to it. That craftsmanship earned official recognition, and in 1989, the park's WPA-era buildings were listed on the National Register of Historic Places as a historic district. Run your hand along one of those stone walls, and you are touching Depression history. Every block was squared by a man who needed that day's wage. The sun is getting long now, and this is the hour the prairie was made for. Low light turns the grass heads into a field of embers, and every seed plume glows around the edges. The heat of the afternoon lifts, and the birds start up again. Photographers in the valley know this park exactly for this moment. It is hard to keep a steady pace when the light keeps asking you to stop. Ask anyone from Fargo or Moorhead about this park and they will mention the swimming pond. The WPA era gave the park a swimming area that grew into a beloved oddity, a man-made pond with a sand bottom and filtered, treated water, watched by lifeguards through the summer. In a valley where the rivers run muddy and natural swimming lakes are scarce, that pond was the beach. Generations of valley kids learned to swim in it. For many families, Buffalo River simply meant summer. What strikes me on this walk is how many lives this small park has led. It is a swimming hole, a campground, a hiker's loop, and a working laboratory all on the same 1,000 acres. Cross one trail junction and you move between them. A family hauling towels one way, a botanist with a clipboard the other. Not bad for a park you could drive past in 90 seconds. That laboratory role is official. Minnesota State University Moorhead operates its regional science center on land adjacent to the park, and this prairie is its classroom. School groups and university students come out to study grassland ecology, survey birds, and learn the plants of the old lakebed. Generations of area kids have had their first real encounter with wild prairie right here. It is a fitting fate for a landscape that has this much to teach. Out on the far side of the loop, the grass closes in and the mowed path narrows to a green hallway. By August, the big bluestem here will stand taller than I am. You learn to recognize its seed heads, split into 3 parts like a bird's foot, which is why the old-timers called it turkey foot. The wind moves through in long, visible waves. From inside the grass, the prairie stops being scenery and becomes a place. The park's 1,000 acres are only the front porch of something much larger. In 1975, the Nature Conservancy began buying remnant prairie south of the Buffalo River and kept adding to it parcel by parcel. Today, the adjoining Bluestem Prairie Scientific and Natural Area protects more than 6,000 acres. Taken together, the park and the preserve form one of the largest and highest quality tallgrass prairie remnants anywhere in Minnesota. What survived by accident is now kept alive on purpose. Looking south from the trail, there is no fence line in the grass to tell you where park becomes preserve. The prairie simply keeps going, farther than anywhere else in this corner of the state. More than 300 plant species have been recorded on that ground, including several the state lists as special concern. It is a whole botanical library standing in the wind. And in spring, it hosts one of the great wildlife shows in Minnesota. That show belongs to the greater prairie chicken. On April mornings before sunrise, the males gather on short grass patches called leks, or booming grounds. Each male inflates brilliant orange air sacs on his neck, raises feathered horns, drums his feet, and pours out a low 3-note boom that carries a mile across the flats. The females stroll the lek and judge. Visitors can reserve viewing blinds here in early spring and watch a courtship ritual older than the lake ridges it dances on. The prairie chickens share this grassland with even rarer neighbors. The western prairie fringed orchid blooms here, a pale, delicately fringed flower that is federally listed as threatened and depends on night-flying hawk moths to pollinate it. Rare prairie butterflies like the regal fritillary and the Dakota skipper still fly among some 250 kinds of wildflowers and grasses in the park. Around 200 bird species and 40 kinds of mammals have been recorded here. Little remnants like this are the whole world for species that can live nowhere else. Once you know what's out here, you walk differently. Every butterfly crossing the trail might be something that exists in only a handful of places on Earth. Coneflowers, blazing star, prairie clover, each one has its specialists and its story. The prairie does not shout the way mountains do. It rewards the walker who slows down and looks close. There is one more secret to this landscape, and it is fire. Tallgrass prairie is born to burn, and for thousands of years regular fires cleared invading brush, recycled nutrients, and let the deep-rooted grasses roar back stronger. Take fire away and prairie quietly turns into thicket. So today the land managers here light the fires themselves, running carefully planned prescribed burns across sections of park and preserve. A blackened prairie in spring looks like ruin, and within weeks it is the greenest ground in the county. This place survives because people learn to burn it well. Evening is the prairie's closing argument. With nothing to interrupt it, the sky out here becomes the whole show, a dome of gold and rose over grass turned to bronze. It is the same sky that stood over the lake, over the bison herds, over the wheat crews and the WPA masons. On the flattest land in America, the sunsets are somehow the biggest. You do not so much watch them as stand inside them. "3 miles and I have walked the bottom of a vanished inland sea, crossed its stranded beaches, and passed through one of the last true stands of the grass that built this soil." Buffalo River State Park is a small park guarding an enormous story, patiently kept by fire, by science, and by people who loved a swimming pond on the prairie. If you find yourself in the Fargo-Moorhead country, give this place an evening and walk out into the grass. Thank you for watching. Follow for more of the trails of the world.